Good? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. So, thank you all for coming. This is a very special event. It's been held, as you heard, in many places all over the world. And I'm going to share one of my adventure stories with you. This was the adventure of a lifetime. It was in 1978. I was going to drive from Los Angeles to the eastern shores of Canada in Nova Scotia, about 4,000 miles without getting on a freeway. The adventure was fantastic. My final goal was to go into Nova Scotia on the ferry, take another ferry over to Labrador, and go to the Gooseberry Festival. 23 miles at the end of the road in Labrador. And I did that. But I'm going to tell you about my first stop on that trip. I was going to visit two of my old Army buddies. We met at the 11-Point River in the Missouri Ozarks. And we were planning a canoe trip down through the Missouri Ozarks into the Arkansas Ozarks. And I was really looking forward to this because my two buddies were canoeing experts. They had grown up canoeing up in Michigan and Illinois. They'd won competitions. And I was really looking forward to this because I grew up on boats. My uncle was a salmon fisherman in the San Juan Islands. And I knew a lot about boating, but I didn't really know anything about canoeing. So I was looking forward to this. We camped out the night before. We got down to the river. Travis and I got our gear together. And Lloyd took the canoe down to the river. He was going to get all set up. We were getting ready, and all of a sudden, we hear, "Help! Help! Help!" Travis and I run down the river, and there's the canoe going down the river. And Lloyd's swimming after it. He eventually caught up to that. We ran down along the trail. He brought the canoe over, and we got it back up. And I was wondering if that movie that I saw, Deliverance, might be in my future. But we were going to do it anyway. So Travis and I got in the canoe, and we round the first bend in the river. And Travis says, "Oh my God, no, not that." And I went, "What? That up there? All those rocks and river flowing over him?" And he said, I hadn't really expected to be in this kind of a rapid. We hadn't really planned it out, but we know we can do anything. But you're green, so you've got to do exactly what I say. I said, "Okay, no problem." So he said, "Just listen to me. I'm going to scream at you because we're going to be in the rapid in a minute." So we get right into the heart of that rapid, and he yells, "Power left!" So I powered left, like this. I dug into that water. But he had forgot to tell me one thing about canoeing. And if you are canoeists, you probably know this. You dig in, if you really need to, but you have to stay straight in the canoe. Because if you go like this, guess what happens to the canoe? It goes like this. And that's what the canoe did. It went like this. All our gear fell out. My oar went down the river. And the canoe's going like this. Unfortunately, Travis was an expert canoeist, and he righted up the canoe, and he got us through the river to those rapids. We got our paddle, we got all our gear, dried it out a bit, and we went down the river again. And it was a beautiful day. We did some bass fishing. We found rope swings on these cliffs and went off those cliffs and dove into the water. And it was a fantastic day. About dusk, we met Lloyd because he had driven the truck around. And we met him, and he had a campsite set up for us on this plateau. And we camped there for the night. And it was, for me, one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had because I saw a meteorite shower. I mean, it was just stars just shooting all over the place. It was unbelievable. Well, the next day, Lloyd and Travis were going to continue the journey. And I was going to drive the truck down to a friend's house of Lloyd's down in Arkansas. So we did that. They took off. I got down to his house about 11 o'clock. And he said, I got to go to work. But you can take my bass boat. There's some really great bass fishing holes up there. And I love to fish. So I said, okay, fine, I'm doing that. Took off, gave me this bass boat, went up to this nice little eddy in there, and I started fishing. And I just caught bass after bass. And in 1 hour, I had used up all of my bait. I wasn't done. I had 10 bass, good-sized bass, but I wasn't finished. So I'm looking around, and some of you know me, and some of you don't, and I'm really kind of a clever guy, you know? And so I was looking around for some bait, and there on the rock, right at the end of the boat, was this frog. And I don't know if any of you know about bass, but bass love frogs, let me tell you. So I'm going to get me that frog down there. So I reached for it, and I noticed it wasn't moving. And then I got really close, and I realized it wasn't moving because it was in the mouth of a cottonmouth snake. One of those poisonous cottonmouth snakes. Now, I grew up in the islands, you know, I knew all about snakes, and I'm going to give you a little lesson about snakes. If you grab a snake right by the jaw, and you just put on a vice grip like that, it can't bite you. So if you ever run into a snake, try that out. But I'm getting that frog. I'm telling you, I'm getting that frog. So I grab that cottonmouth snake, and it's going like this, and I reach in, and I pull out that frog, and I throw it in my bait bucket, and you know, I thought originally, you know, I'd just take it out and I'd throw the snake like this, but it was going like this. And I went, I guess I hadn't really planned for this. And what was I going to do? I could let it go, but it might bite me in the process. And then, here's where the clever part comes in. I looked down in my boat, and it just hit me like that. I knew exactly what to do. I reached in, I unscrewed the lid, I pulled up that fifth of Jack Daniels, and I poured 2 shots right down the mouth of that cottonmouth snake. And his eyes rolled back in its head, and it went limp. And I went, no problem. I had myself a frog. Now I cut up that frog on my fish. I caught me a bass. You know, I caught me a bass. You know, a good-sized bass. But I was done with that bait in about 2 fish. You know, I wasn't done yet. And then I felt this little nudging on my leg, kind of over the side of the boat. And I looked down, and there's that cottonmouth snake. And it's got 2 frogs in its mouth. And it looks up at me, and it looks down at that fifth of Jack Daniels. It looks up at me again, and looks down at that fifth of Jack Daniels, and I'm kind of clever, you know, so I figured out what the deal was. But here's a piece of advice. Never trust a snake. I reached down, and with a vice grip, I grabbed that snake, and I ripped off those 2 frogs, and I threw them in my bait bucket, but it was just sitting there. Wasn't doing anything. I looked down there at that fifth of Jack Daniels, so I took that out, poured it. This time, I gave him 3 shots. And it's just, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen a snake grin, but it's got the biggest grin. And it's unbelievable. And, you know, I just kind of shivered a little bit, and then I dropped it down in the water. Well, I cut up those fish. I went fishing. I caught 10 more bass. You know, they were big bass. We had a great barbecue. It was fantastic. And you might think the story ends there. But I came back to LA, and in 1984, I moved up to Davis. And now most of you live around this area, but down every year in Rio Vista, they have a bass fishing contest. And you can win $500 for first place. And you get your name on a plaque. So since '84, I've been trying to win that thing. You know, I came close. I got me a 16-pound bass one time. And this time I was determined. I found a frog. It wasn't the right kind of frog, but I thought, well, that's going to be good. And I went out fishing, and I caught me a 20-pound bass, and I knew I was going to win. This is 2004. I knew I was going to win that. And then I heard over the loudspeaker, John Jacobs, 24-pound bass leader right now, 15 minutes to go. And that's when the magic happened. I felt this little nudge on my leg. And I looked down there, and there was that cottonmouth snake. And you might find this hard to believe, that a snake could go all the way from the Level Point River in Missouri up over the Rockies. I mean that's an amazing snake. Over the Rockies, it had to go over the Sierras, down Lake Tahoe, in the Sacramento River, all the way to Rio Vista, just to find me. Well, it had that snake, a nice frog, the right kind of frog. And then, I even find the next part hard to believe. Right next to him came the prettiest, gorgeous, female cottonmouth snake you'll ever see in your life. She had eyelashes that curled up like this, and on the end of each eyelash was a silver, shiny scale. She was beautiful. And then, probably the most precious thing I've ever seen in my life happened. Right next to her came out these two little toddler boy and girl snakes. And they had these little frogs in their mouth. And they looked up at me, all of them, and looked down at that fifth of Jack Daniels. And then I kind of knew what to do at that point. And I felt like I could kind of trust them at this point in my bass fishing experience. So I just unscrewed that cap, poured the whole fifth right in the pan. And as soon as I did that, all those snakes just spit out those frogs right into my bait bucket. And they went on, we went swimming for a while. I don't advise any of you parents to teach your little toddler kids to drink Jack Daniels, but I'm not a snake, so I really can't judge. So I took those frogs and I cut them up, and I caught a 28-pound bass, and I won that contest. And if you don't believe me, you take yourself a trip down to Rio Vista and go down to the docks and look where they have the plaques of all the winners, and it'll say 2004 Ed Lewis, 28-pound bass. And I have a proposition for any of you here. If you ever want to go bass fishing with me, I will get you the best bait. All you have to do is bring along a fifth of Jack Daniels. Okay, now I realize that some of you might have a little doubt about the credibility of my truthfulness and storytelling from that last story. But I guarantee you, this next story is completely true. And I have a witness right here in the front, my traveling buddy, John Larson. He went on some of this adventure with me. So, and I've told many of you that I've met that this is going to happen. So I'm sure that most all of you, when you woke up this morning, you just thought, how can I become a multimillionaire? And, I'm so glad that you came here, because I am going to share my journey to becoming a multimillionaire. And hopefully it will be instructive, and some of you might learn some things and go on your own journey. It started back in 9th grade in 1959 in Seattle, Washington. My father just got a promotion to be the West Coast manager of the Cyclone Fence Division of United States Steel. And we were moving from middle-class Tacoma, Washington, into the upper-class area of Seattle, near the University of Washington. And I was going to go to this Ivy League school. Well, my father and mother had visions of their son getting a music scholarship because I was a musical prodigy as a kid. I played clarinet, and I played in my dad's Dixieland band, and got to play with some college orchestras. And so I thought I was going to have a great career in that. And I had a 3.5 grade point average going there into the Ivy League school. So they had visions of that. I'd be going to Harvard. And my dad always told me, when you go to Harvard, you make sure that you find yourself a nice, lovely, millionaire's girlfriend from the East Coast out there where the big money is. So that was his plan. Well, a couple things got in the way. One of them was 1964. That was when we were marching for civil rights, marching for women's movements, protesting the Vietnam War for a couple of years while we were in college there, growing our hairline, vowing poverty. Didn't quite go on with my parents' vision. And we did all that stuff, and then the Vietnam War came along. I was drafted, went through service, and when I got out, I was back to the land. I was going to be part of the hippie movement. We were hitchhiking around the United States. We were going to Europe. People were going to India. I went down into Africa. I spent 2 years traveling. I spent 6 months in a cave in the Canary Islands trying to find myself. From there, I went across to the Sahara Desert with a businessman. He was a young businessman that I had met. He lived with me the last couple months in the caves, and he said, "Yeah, come on up. You can see my business dealings here. It's a great business." And what we're going to do is we're going to take a boat from here, Canary Islands, into Spanish Sahara, which is now Mauritania, south of Morocco. We're going to take a taxi drive out to the middle of the Sahara Desert, and there's going to be about 8 little food-type places out here, and then trucks keep coming through, and we're going to hop on a truck and go through the Sahara Desert and come up into southern Morocco, up with the Bedouin traders. We did that. It was a great trip. 3 days on top of a truck with 23 local Bedouin nomadic people. It was fantastic. We went up through Morocco, and we came up to where he was doing his business deals. He was in the business of sending hashish back to the United States. So for a month, I lived on a hash farm, and I'm lucky I got off that hash farm, I'll tell you. But then I went down and caught on a boat in Gibraltar and sailed the Mediterranean. It was a fantastic experience. I ended up in England. I got to dance, go to the ball of the Duke of Arundel for his daughters. I got to dance with the Duke's daughter. Had a great experience. I was starting to get back into some of the thinking about money again. You know, and I was at the castle, and then I came back to the States, and I got a job from my dad building fences in Sun Valley, Idaho. I was hired to build 23 tennis courts. Because Sun Valley, Idaho, I don't know if you know much about it, but it's a very wealthy community, a great ski resort, and they were trying to build up their summer activities, recreational activities. So I hired my 2 Army buddies. We built 23 tennis courts. And before we finished the last one, this millionaire Chicago publicist came up to me and said, "Hey, would you guys like to come up and build me a tennis court? I got a dude ranch up about 50 miles north in Stanley. And I want a tennis court." So I said, "Well, you got to contact my dad." So he did, and they made the arrangements, and Travis and I drove our trucks up there. We camped out on the end of his property, right by a fishing stream. Salmon were coming up to spawn. We fished every day. It was beautiful. We'd hike in a quarter of a mile and build this tennis court. We got to meet his family. He told us all about making money. And then the idea started going again. Money, okay, millionaire. I think I'm going to move in that direction. But that's the end of that summer. I was heading down 3,000 miles in my car again from Seattle to Cholula, Puebla, Mexico, where I was going to go to the Universidad de las Americas and become a bilingual education specialist, get a degree from there. Well, I drove down there, and the second day I was there, this young, attractive, East Coast millionaires decided I was going to be her boyfriend. It took her 2 days to convince me, and then I was her boyfriend. So now I was back on track. You know, I was going there. So we spent 2 quarters at the school, and then the 3rd quarter started, and before it started, the administration was caught in some lying. They were firing some of the liberal archaeology professors and trying to change this into a business college. So the faculty went on strike, and they got us students to back them up. We sent in the rugby team to the administration offices, and we escorted all of them out of the campus. We closed the gate. In the Vietnam era, I was a weapons specialist, so they gave me the first hose on top of the wall there, and we were going to just hose down anybody that tried to come in, the police, anybody, the strike breakers. But they weren't about to do that because there were too many rich American kids there. There was a daughter of the vice president for Chiquita Bananas throughout South America. She was going there. A U.S. senator's son was going there. So they let us be. And after about 2 weeks, Vicki and I went, this is too boring. Let's do something else. Now, Vicki had a jewelry business going. So every weekend we would go out to these really great jewelry factories and houses throughout Mexico and stay in the fanciest hotels. And so I was getting kind of a new lifestyle going for me there. So we took off, and from our archaeology professor, we had all these digs we were going to go to, archaeological digs. We went to Palenque in the Yucatan. We went up in the Mayan region and lived with some Mayans up there for a couple weeks that just spoke Mayan. She did some jewelry business with them. We went down, got on the Trans-American Highway, and we went into Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, going to all these new archaeological digs, which are really fascinating. Then we came back up the northern part, went up through Guatemala to Tikal, which is my favorite archaeological site in the world. Go there if you get a chance. Then went into Belize, and then back into the Yucatan, where there's Tulum, Chichen Itza, Uxmal, all these great places. We drove back to Mexico City. I dropped Vicki off. She flew home, and then I drove up to her house. Went to New Orleans, this really cool Mardi Gras type festival. We saw some Army buddies on the way, and I got to her mansion with 14 acres up in Ridgefield, Connecticut. We sat down at the dinner table the first night. It was this long table. They could seat about 20 people. And I'm at one end, and the dad's looking over me, and he said, "Well, son, what do you think you're going to be doing with your life?" And I said, I'm really concerned about the poor. And I think, I've got this bilingual teaching credential. I think I'm going to work with migrant farm camp children as a preschool teacher or maybe an elementary school teacher. And I saw him look at his wife, look at his daughter, shake his head. And he actually said to her, "You're doing this again?" By long hair and beard. But we decided we were going to get married. So she had to work for the summer. I came back to Seattle, built some more fences, and I was going to go to Sonoma State College and go into the teacher credential program. Well, I got down there. I got a really nice apartment, fixed it all up more than I normally would, put plants in there, because here she was going to come out, and we were going to get married in a few months. And about a week before the semester started, I get a phone call. I kind of been thinking about what my dad was saying, and, I met some other people, and, the wedding's off. I'm not coming. I met a golf pro. It broke my little heart. About 3 years later, she married the vice president of the Hilton Hotels in the Bahamas. And we kept in touch over the years. And then it was about 1986. I got a call from her brother, and she was in a hospital. In college, she had been a champion swimmer, and she was actually going to the Olympics when she decided to go to Mexico instead. And she got run over by a speedboat, and it chopped off her arm right above the elbow. And her husband got that elbow, some of that chopped off piece, flew her to Miami to a specialist, and they had reattached the arm, and she was in the hospital, and her brother was telling me about that. But then I lost touch with her. I didn't know what happened after that. So now it's 2011, and I was taking care of my father for 3 years while he had Alzheimer's. And his short-term memory was completely gone, but his long-term memory was fine. So I used to take him back up to Seattle to see his old friends. And I was visiting one of his friends, and the wife said to me, "Is there anybody that you'd like to find? Anyone, from your past? I'm a genealogist. I didn't find anyone for you." So she said, "Give me a full list." So I gave her 10 names. Gave her a couple names of guys that were in a rock and roll band I played in high school, some elementary school friends, some high school friends, some old Army buddies. And then I gave her Vicky's name. But all I had was her name in Florida and her husband, Bahamas, Hilton in the Bahamas. So about 2 months later, she had found everyone except Vicky. And about 2 months later, she said, "No, I got a lead. I don't know if it's her, but I found an obituary column for this man, and the name Vicky's in it. And I've run down a phone number." I said, "Okay, I'll give it a call." So I called. Ed, Vicky. It was Vicky. We caught up. We had a great conversation. She said, "Yeah, my husband passed away about 3 years ago, but we've had a great life together. We own 8 resorts all around the world. I'm living right now on the island of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I just sold the Buccaneer Resort, which is one of the top 50 resorts in the world. But they kept me on as director. So I'm here, and you can come out. I'll set you up in a room." And I said, "Okay, can I bring my traveling buddy, John Larson, with me, my old high school friend?" He said, "Sure." So he has a son who's a pilot, and all these deals for flying for no cost or low cost and all that. And so we got out there, went to Puerto Rico, and then we went to see Vicky. Vicky put us up in this $500 a night room right down on the bay there, and it was a great reunion. We had a really good time. We spent 5 days there, and then we went to other islands. And we got to meet the governor, and she was a real bigwig around town. She had her sons, two of them graduated from Harvard, one of them was at Princeton. And she was just really beloved in that community. She'd lived there for 28 years. And, we did kind of rekindle a really deep friendship. So I just kind of want to tell you, towards the end of our trip there, I did leave her a thank you note, and right on that thank you note, I did happen to include my birthday, and I don't know how it happened, but out of my wallet, a blank deposit check must have fallen in there, and so I'm kind of here to tell you that hold on to your dreams, because you never know when somebody might just throw $1 million your way. Right now, I want to introduce Marion Ferrante. Marion's the chair of a storytelling group in the Antioch area where I had my teaching career, and we did a celebration at the college for
11 years.
11 years together, and she'll tell you more about what's going on.
Linda opened it up to be part of the Bay Area. We have the Storytelling Association of California, and they are having a festival in April. So we have save the date postcards for an area festival, which will be, as I said, April 29, 30, and May 1st of next year. So you can go online to the Bay Area Storytelling Festival. It's going to be 3 days, Friday night, all day, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, we have for you from the Bay Area Storytelling Festival a free Sunday pass. Let's figure out who's going to receive this right now.